Hello, guys and gals, me, Mutahar, and you know about, I think a week ago, I was like, ooh, big deep web drama happened. Well, ladies and gentlemen, nothing ever blows my mind than watching really professional people, nerds, beef it out over the internet. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is because I use something known as NixOS. Not necessarily all the time. Now, NixOS is a declarative distribution, so effectively the idea of this operating system is, it's not something for the faint of heart, let me tell you. So imagine that computer all the way back there, the computer that I'm using, two separate pieces of hardware. Now, if you wanted to basically configure the system to run exactly the same, right? You wanted to configure your system to have sort of the same applications, same everything, you can design NixOS and deploy a very similar operating system, a very similar like system amongst two separate pieces of hardware, right? So whether you're working on a couple computers or just mass deploying, NixOS is pretty cool. Now, you might be like, whoa, what kind of internet controversy or beef or drama could happen inside a fucking Linux distribution? Well, ladies and gentlemen, never let a moderation crisis go to waste. So to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, the NixOS system has a steering committee, okay? Now, a steering committee is an elected group of people, very democratic. SC is responsible for guiding projects in alignment with the community values. And it has these following responsibilities: project direction, decision-making, coordination with the foundation, creation and management of teams, management of official resources. Well, because of the steering committee, which, by the way, you can absolutely vote for them right now. Again, it's a very democratic world when it comes to online open source software development. But of course, alas, some massive drama had occurred. A statement from the members of the moderation team. We resign effective immediately in protest of the steering committee's ongoing pattern of attempting to interfere with moderation team operation, membership, and specific decisions. This is not a statement we enjoy making, and we apologize to the community for leaving right before an election that is bound to be contentious, and likely now more so. Man, there's elections that happen all over the world. I don't really give a shit about them. What I care about is my Linux systems, okay? I love using Linux, not because of a, political ideology, mostly because I want to use an open source free alternative to Microsoft's crappy anti-consumer operating system. But of course, like most internet, argumentation, it always bleeds into pretty much everything. Unfortunately, the Constitution does not provide a meaningful recourse to the SC overreach, and we cannot in good faith continue operating under the current conditions. So mind you, the SC is an elected body, okay? And the moderation team is not really the original moderation team, obviously, since the, NixOS project started. A lot of people come in and out because, these projects go on for quite a while. People come in, they rotate in and out as time goes on. So the SC has involved itself in matters of moderation since the inception, but has repeatedly failed to understand the issues in the community. So the members attempted to stall implementation of some moderator decisions and actively subverting others. The members of the SC, the appointed elected council, asserted their authority to specifically target individual community members and topic of conversation and pressure moderation to apply additional action under threat of further interference. SC members demanding justification for mod actions post hoc, responding aggressively when explanations have been misunderstood, and going silent with no acknowledgement. Their attempt to unilaterally remove moderation team members with no justification. Then their attempt to appoint new members to the moderation team. Initially phrased as a suggestion with a stated goal of adding diversity of opinion and tension to the moderation team. Apparently trying to address perceptions of political bias by making political appointments, despite the suggestion being immediately rejected as destructive and misguided, despite the specific candidate being rejected as unsuitable by the moderation team, and agreement from SC that at least some of the reasons discussed were disqualifying, eventually phrased as a mandatory directive, and no further mention of the candidate in the intervening months. and after said candidate explicitly petitioning SC to install them as a moderator. So basically, most, if not all, I think around 5 out of the 7 of the moderation team basically were like, yeah, we're out of here, okay? So I really don't know what to gather from this other than somebody was being inserted into the moderation team that I guess didn't really jive well with the clique of other moderators. And so the moderators were kind of like, fuck you guys, we're getting out of here. A mass revolt, a mass resignation. Now, the thing about NixOS is, like I said, it's a great mass deployment system. And, you know, if it wasn't for the fucking constant drama and bickering that happens, not just in this community, but other communities, especially around the topic of politics, you could make an entire multi-part series about it. Now, I don't care if you're a loony leftist or a fucking rambunctious rightoid. I really don't give a shit. To me, Linux, most software, is very apolitical, okay? I do not give a shit about what your personal fucking beliefs are. As long as good code is sent, and as long as most of the community can agree that the code is good, and Linux gets better day by day, because it's an open source project, nobody should really give a shit, okay? I think a lot of the stuff that I see over here makes me fucking cringe, because ultimately it's not about the software. It's not about Linux. It's about, you know, just these fucking people that, you know, frankly are working moderation, and it's a thankless endeavor. They're moderating these forum posts, but the amount of ego and the amount of power tripping that happens over here just makes everybody outside the system look at this and think, damn, these fucking penguin lovers are goddamn insane. But it's not necessarily the case. So the steering committee has also shown in private and public convos their lack of understanding the basic principles of community management and open communication. They've mistaken quiet and a lack of controversy for success and peace. They have consistently become upset when there is criticism and gone quiet on crucial issues in between. We have some fundamental conflicts in this community which require discussion. Meanwhile, discussion with the SC has only become less effective. So yeah, anyways, these are the moderators that have left, and what they want is we call on the SC to join us in resigning, effective immediate, with no second terms, and allow new members to take place based on the community vote. Remember, these guys have already been fucking elected in. We call on the community to demand transparency and accountability from the elected members and checks and balances on their reach. Bro, they're acting like it's like this is the motherfucking White House, okay? God damn. We call on the SC candidates to commit to implementing a constitution reform that will require transparency and accountability from the SC. You know, for a lot of you guys out there that, like, you know, you really kind of like don't really watch my Linux content, this might hit you like a truck because you're like, whoa, there's a lot of anger that happens on these communities. And it is pretty true for the most part, right? There is a lot of anger that comes in. So if they were appointing somebody basically on the perception of, you know, addressing a political bias, that alone doesn't make sense to me. I think if you're going to appoint people, you should just appoint people that are good at maintaining the standard code of conduct that is around the world. You shouldn't ever, in my opinion, moderate a platform by going off the code of conduct and using your own personal worldview to impose onto other people. That just never works, and it's just going to piss more people off than ever. Moderation is one of those things where, like, you make way more fucking enemies than you will ever make friends in the course of your career. And that's just the blunt truth about it. So obviously, you know, the people in the NixOS Reddit, which we all know which side Reddit kind of leans towards, even they're just kind of sitting over there like, first step in NixOS, not continuing down a worse path. Good riddance. Now, if only we could get rid of people that are Red Hat, Fedora, Debian. Man, we are fucking Game of Thrones up in here, okay? We are fighting distributions. This is the biggest problem with Linux, okay? It's the goddamn fucking fragmentation, and the communities are all fucking at each other. Some, at least the fringe jihadists in the community. Jesus, this community can't keep itself from taking the most dramatic option. That is very true. Just wokies doing their things. Guess they ran out of Nazis to purge and are bored or something. Now again, I don't know necessarily if that part is entirely fucking true. But again, you know, this is something that's been happening for like years now. Where again, you can go to like sites like SRID, where they talk about the wokey invasion of NixOS, and that's traced all the way back to 2021, right? And they have timeline citations for authors getting banned, witch hunts by the moderation board to get all of NixOS's Asia's domain. And again, like I said earlier, I don't care what the fuck side you're on. Like, at the end of the day, this is software. It's inherently supposed to be pretty apolitical. Like, we're just writing software that ultimately is what is backending most of the world. And it's crazy when you think about Linux, right? Like, Linux is one of the most important, the largest open source projects. This is an XKCD that, you know, some of you guys, if you're ever in the world of like anything software related, probably have seen this. All modern digital infrastructure, so each of every single thing here you see is a dependency, but the most important dependency that's keeping everything afloat is just maintained by some random person since 2003. And that, you know, we can laugh at the moderation anger here, but this is not like a subreddit, okay? This is a very important distribution. In fact, most of the guts of Linux is very important for the majority of how the world works. The website that you're using to watch this video on is functioning because of Linux, because of some dependency that is probably fucking maintained by some guy thanklessly since 2003. So, you know, when you start to look at the interpersonal drama and the anger here, it could have pretty far-reaching long-term consequences. But one of the best coverages on this is probably by this. When somebody wanted to explain what was the issue here, the steering committee is an elected community leadership body. It was established as part of the governance constitution last year, after which those elections that we were talking about were held. The moderation team was actually established before any of this stuff even existed. So the initial moderators were appointed from RFC 102 with the mandate to self-select successors. Over the year, the team has changed members a lot. None of the initial members are part of it anymore, and the last larger rotation happened last year. The responsibilities include moderation according to the COC of the official community spaces. So when one user's like, so the moderation team isn't happy that they're accountable to a group of elected members? Correct. They want to be a completely unaccountable group who moderates according to their own rules, not the documented code of conduct, which obviously is the issue that, I think most people kind of have. So it's kind of hard to sort of like side with these individuals. Simply because, like, listen, okay, you're going to resign. At the end of the day, we just want a community that is clean. We want a community that just, ultimately focuses primarily on the software without talking about random bullshit that is very inconsequentially related to Linux. Now, of course, one of the things that obviously has kind of blown my mind is, if you think this is wild, I want to just kind of end this sort of like, video off on just covering a whole bunch of goofy times and scenarios just to show you the wild nature of Linux mailing lists, okay? Now, you guys probably know the name Linus Torvalds. He's basically the benevolent dictator for life, literally behind the Linux kernel. Basically the man that has been maintaining it for all this time. Now, when he gets fucking mad, he gets mad. So, for instance, I want to read you a few emails from Linus Torvalds. Linus Torvalds emails an individual and says, guys, this is not a dick-sucking contest. If you want to parse PE binaries, go right ahead. Do it. Go right ahead. If Red Hat wants to deep throat Microsoft, that's your issue. That has nothing whatsoever to do with the kernel I maintain. It's trivial for you guys to have a signing machine that parses the PE binary, verifies the signatures, and signs the fucking keys with your own key. You already wrote the code, for Christ's sake. It's in that fucking pull request. Why should I care? Why should the kernel care about some idiotic stupidity? Damn, dude. It's fucking what? Linus can get mad. And of course, it's not the only email. You might be like, man, he probably had a bad day. Here's another email from 2012, okay? Linus is writing and says, Moro, shut the fuck up. It's a bug, all right, in the kernel. How long have you been a maintainer and you still haven't learned the first rule of kernel maintenance? Man, this is insanity. If a change results in user programs breaking, it's a bug in the kernel. We never, ever blame the user programs. How hard can this be to understand? I mean, this is the thing about open source development, okay? Like, in a corporate structure, you have like HR, like these emails don't really, or shouldn't get sent. But because this is fucking open source, Linus has no chill, okay? Of course, back in 2018, Linus Torvalds then decided, all right, guys, I'm a little sorry, okay? I know that I get a little bit mad in the kernel mailing lists, but yeah, honestly, I'm not even that mad at it. Linus, go off, King, okay? You deserve a little bit of anger every once in a while. But of course, that's really not the only thing out here, too. For instance, there are moments where like other people in these kernel mailing lists get caught screaming at other people. For instance, this one email, Kent Overstreet, actually ends up with him going to the person he's talking to, Michal. If you think crashing processes is an acceptable alternative to error handling, you have no business writing kernel code. Okay, so that's already stern. You've been stridently arguing for one bad idea after another, and it's an insult to those of us who give a shit about writing reliable software. You're arguing with basic precepts of kernel programming. Get your head examined and get the fuck out of here with this shit. I mean, I'll tell you right now, if you're maintaining the kernel, you are not fit unless you can handle a few angry emails. But of course, even with this situation, we have a code of conduct in the Linux community. And of course, because of this email, no pull requests for Bcash's FS's lead developer, Kent, will be honored for that current cycle, okay? It is crazy shit. But again, it's just a way to maintain some fucking civility. Because at the end of the day, for all the nerds that work on Linux, I think a lot of these nerds come from old school gamer culture, and it can get pretty wild. At times, Linus will also not stop talking about like his beliefs, and rightfully so here, 2021. You thought, oh man, he took a little break. This is an email he had to a guy that writes in. So this is Enrico, and he writes, I know a lot of people will never take part in this generic human experiment that basically creates a new humanoid race. And again, this is all about like vaccines. So again, Linus comes in, please keep your insane and technically incorrect anti-vax comments to yourself. He goes into this entire situation. But damn it, regardless of where you get your misinfo from, any kernel discussion list isn't going to have your idiotic drivel pass uncontested from me. And then of course he goes all the way into the vaccine stuff. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, he tells you, if you insist on believing in your theories, at least shut the hell up about it on Linux kernel discussion lists. Now look, I think that's a good mentality to have. I don't care what you believe. But at the end of the day, what I've learned about NixOS or Linux in general is that I just care about the fucking software, okay? I just want my thing to work. For me, most of the times when I go to these like moderation boards, it's not because I want to engage in the community and argue with some other fucking loser on the internet. We're both losers, okay? I'm a loser. The guy on the board is a loser. If we're going to argue with each other, it's two losers getting into a battle. But I use these boards a lot when it comes to just me getting an announcement for if I should update my system or not. If there's some problem that happens in an update, then I'll hold off for an extra day. Or maybe there's like a guide for something that I need to look at, a hyper-specific guide. I don't need to constantly have the moderation team, sort of exalt their views onto the average user base, okay? As long as people are generally respectful on this board, as long as people are not cussing at each other, as long as people aren't telling each other to shut the fuck, as long as it doesn't look anywhere like Linus's angry mailing days, I don't think the moderation needs to be that excessive. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you something right now. Linux drama is fucking insanity. And this is just a slight little taste of it. Because it gets even wilder from here. What I'm showing you is just a small base, okay? This is just what happens when a few people on the internet get a little bit of power and they launch that shit through the entire world. And the thing is, because it's Linux, because ultimately a lot of professional organizations use this shit, the implications of unrelated fucking beef and drama and anger could ultimately affect the product that everyone uses down the road. But yeah, it's just wild. It was funny to me, and I wanted to share it. I know for a lot of you guys watching would be like, man, I don't care about this nerd drama. And I get that. I understand. But I really do. I really find this shit to be mind-blowing, okay? Because I kind of expect it. It's funny, right? Like, when I look at, like, anger, when I look at things in the flat earth community, when I look at, like, Harvard scientists go at each other, when we were looking at, like, the meteor being alien life, when I look at the Linux community consisting of really talented developers arguing at each other and fucking bitching each other, when people are arguing like they are on, like, a Discord, it's just such it's such whiplash. But ladies and gentlemen, yeah, I wanted to summarize this beef. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I'm gonna go play some Sleeping Dogs.